Topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now,
Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View. I am your host, Nick Pitts, for this Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 day. I am so grateful that you've decided to join us. Those of you that are in the Dallas area as well as in the Minnesota markets, we are so grateful. Know that here in the Dallas area, there is much to be talking about today. We have there was a lot that happened last night and a lot that will happen tonight, especially if you are a sports fan, because as we know, last night Dirk Nowitzki decided after 21 season, 31,000 plus points that he is hanging it up, and so he announced his retirement. So we'll be talking a little bit about the significance of Dirk here in the North Dallas area, as well as his off the court and on the court work. And so I think that there's a lot of richness, and there's a reason why so much of the media world has taken attention as well as given time to talking about the man, the myth, the legend that is number 41 himself. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then obviously I need you all to know, especially those of you that have been tuning in for a little bit, you feel the tension that exists in my voice right now and then in my heart, because though I'm a resident here in Dallas, I do know that my Nashville Predators kick off the Stanley Cup, the march to the Stanley Cup tonight, and they play the Dallas Stars. That's right, the Dallas Stars and the Nashville Predators. A house divided will fall, but thankfully there is one solid foundation in this house. That is the Nashville Predators, to say the very least. And so I probably won't be talking about that, because then I'll be saying some inappropriate words. But nevertheless, we're going to be considering ourselves rooting for the Nashville Predators, even though we are located in the heart of the Dallas area. But so we'll be talking a little bit about that. But we've got a great show for you. I've got in studio with me here during the first little segment, we've got David Fraga here. Those of you know David. David, how are you today?
Doing great. Go Stars.
God, okay. Can we make sure that his mic is cut? We don't need any of that. We don't need any of that garbage that's being put through the microphone. But nevertheless, David, so grateful to have you here with us. And then for those of you that are tuning in, know that we have got quite a show for you. We're going to be talking about everything from loneliness. There's new research that came out relative to loneliness and the 3 different stages of loneliness that some individuals feel, as well as the looming nature of it. I want to jump into another topic as well about vaccines. There's been much that's been made. This has kind of gone back for years. I mean, it stretches all the way back 400 years, back into 19th century Great Britain area, and we will be talking a little bit about that as well, just because New York City has declared a public health emergency because of the measles epidemic that is beginning to sweep that city, specifically targeting certain neighborhoods of ultra-Orthodox Jews. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that relative to the biblical narrative. And then finally, we'll be sharing a little bit about Christianity losing ground. There was an article in the New York Post that highlighted the fact that, again, we're continuing to see this precipitous drop in the number of individuals that are participating in the religious practices, and specifically Christianity one being them. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that, and then, of course, we'll be talking about Dirk. But before we get to any of that, as many of you know, I'm a big fan of celebrating whenever you can, as long as the day is still called today. And today is National Siblings Day, for those of you who didn't know. And so I've got I know that my brother is listening to me right now, and so I can't help but think that I was that he was the guy that I wanted to kill when I was younger and the guy now that I'd be willing to lay down my life for, and how much that can transform over a period of time. David, do you have any siblings?
I do. I have an older brother and an older sister. One's married, one's not.
One married, one not. Are they here in the area?
Yeah, so one's in Plano and one's back in East Texas. So
growing up in the Fraga household, did you all hate each other? Did you all fight with each other? Did you all love each other and serve each other tea, etc.? What was the situation?
Oh man, it was such a serving. No, that is so opposite. No, we were always picking on each other, always trying to get each other in trouble. You know how it is, and we grew up in a very competitive household. So especially just having an older brother, you always want to beat him. You know, as a younger brother, you always want to beat your older brother in everything. Yeah, but he always wins, and so it just makes you even more mad. So you're
a soccer guy, though, right?
Yeah,
Were you a soccer guy? Okay,
soccer guy.
Was he better than you at soccer?
Yeah, he was more athletic. Okay, but it got to the point. Okay, it got to the point. Okay, that I got a little bit better than him. So it got to the point eventually.
Yeah, you can get better at communist kickball, but at the end of the day, it's still communist kickball. No, I'm just kidding. I love soccer. I wasn't able to play it when I played soccer. My brother and I played. My brother was he's younger than I am, 16 months younger. He's always been better than me at every sport that we've played. But one of the interesting things about soccer is I still have vivid memories of driving up to this YMCA soccer field in Cookeville, Tennessee, and then immediately I make my way onto the field. Had never practiced before, but for some reason they saw something inside of me that decided that I needed to start that game. And as soon as the ref blew the whistle, I started screaming and crying and made my way to my parents. And I was 16 years old at the time. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, yeah, was that kind of recent?
I just, soccer never took with me. So, but my brother was phenomenal at it. But National Siblings Day. So for those of you that are listening, if you've got a sibling, be sure to reach out to them and say thank you to them, or you owe me money, as some is the case. And so let's jump over to Dirk before we move to a break right now. David, there's here in the Dallas area specifically, there was a sense of like anticipation. There was a sense of like mourning, but also celebrating that happened last night, which is for 21 seasons, this has been Dirk's team. This is the Mavs have always been associated with Dirk, and the idea that you've had owners that have come and gone, you've had point guards that have come and gone, you've had hair that's come and gone on Dirk, but yet like, there was a sense of loss being his last home game last night.
Yeah, just 21 seasons. That is ridiculous for any athlete.
Yeah, and for one team too. I think one of the things that was so captivating for me is that it was one team that he was with. And not only was it one team, but he refused to give in to the temptation, especially today, of the super team mentality of I'm going to go and I'm going to go leave so I can go play with friends that are other superstars. He just stuck with one team. Instead of going after the super team, he decided to lead his own team, which I think is just a stark difference than what we have today.
Absolutely. And it's so cool to see his character, just how loyal he is to that team, even in the midst of just like, having really, really rough seasons or having great seasons. I mean, heck, they won a championship a few years back.
Championship in 2011. I still remember where I was, and I think it was 2011. From 2011, it was in June of that year. I was in Glen Rose, Texas, of all places.
Glen Rose.
Yeah, and I was working a camp, and I had snuck out from the camp to watch this game in one of the cabins that actually had a television. And I think one of the things that we can just take, of course he's got all these accomplishments, and of course he's got over 30,000 points that he scored, and one championship he brought to the city, a finals MVP, and MVP of the league. But I think more than that, in a culture that's increased, it's just really difficult and with less desirable characteristics that are sometimes accentuated, which you saw with Dirk Nowitzki, is just is a role model that was worthy of emulation. We're going to have to come to a break, but one of the things that I want to do when we come back from the break is kind of break down what's known as eulogy virtues. That I think Dirk really epitomized. We're living in a world today that really gives an emphasis upon this idea of resume virtues, but really what Dirk did, which was so well, is he gave emphasis upon those eulogy virtues, and because of that, we're better because of it. But we've got to take a break, but we'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Nearly half of American adults report sometimes or always feeling lonely. That same study by Cigna also found that nearly the same percentage reported feelings of being left out. That is why they say loneliness is at epidemic levels. 25 years ago, I wrote a book, Signs of Warning, Signs of Hope, making a number of predictions for the future. Chapter 8 set forth the case for a coming crisis of loneliness. Years later, Philip Slater wrote about the pursuit of loneliness. The U.S. Census Bureau documented the increasing number of adults living alone. Dan Keeley talked about living together loneliness in one of his books. And Roberta Hestonese coined the term crowded loneliness. This trend was there for anyone to see if they began reading some of the sociological literature. Of course, lots of people have written about the crisis of loneliness since then. Robert Putnam wrote about it in his famous book, Bowling Alone. He argues that people need to be connected in order for our society to function effectively. Putnam concludes social capital makes us smarter, healthier, safer, richer, and better able to govern a just and stable democracy. In his book, Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal, Senator Ben Sasse laments that our traditional tribes and social connectedness are in collapse. All of this comes at a cost. Julianne Holt-Lundstedt has published research showing that people with weaker social ties had a 50% increased likelihood of dying earlier than those with stronger ones. Being disconnected, she says, is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The loneliness epidemic has arrived. Pastors and churches need to address this dangerous trend. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From 20th Century Fox and Franklin Entertainment, Breakthrough, starring Chrissy Metz, based on a true story. Breakthrough, rated PG, in theaters Wednesday, April 17th. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hey, this is Noel Boucher with the Ministry of Pure Hope, and I just want to encourage you to stand with the Point of View radio team. One of the things I love about Kirby's leadership and the work of the entire team here at Point of View is that they provide a platform for other ministries to come in and speak wisdom, speak truth, speak healing, and bring hope to listeners all around the country. That is a work of great power and great humility to provide such an awesome platform for us to connect as a community around the country. And I'm thankful for that. So support Point of View Radio, support the effort they are making to speak truth into these confusing and hurting times, and stand with this team and this community all around the country.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable on this Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 day with David Fraga. And we've also got Shane Pruitt here as well. Shane, how are you, man?
Doing well. It's good to be back.
So good. So good to have you here. And so we've been talking a little bit about Dirk Nowitzki deciding, and this is just characteristic of Dirk, not wanting the attention, continually wanting to shine the light, give due to other people. It's just really just this. He's almost like a mirror. He's just always reflecting onto others, and really just is a good man from all that we know about him. So he, even to the extent that he didn't announce his retirement until the very last home game of the season, not wanting to make a big show after every game of places that he was visiting. He decided just to hold back from the information, but there was just the looming sense in the air that he was going to be retiring this season. So everyone there was many teams that continually gave honor where honor is due, paid homage to him. I was remembering one, Shane, earlier in the year where Doc Rivers decided he stopped the game, and when he called a timeout, he grabbed the PA microphone, and when he grabbed the PA microphone, he just started giving all this credit and just singing the praises of Dirk, even on his own home court, not on Dirk's court. I just thought that just speaks a lot about the man that has captivated and won the hearts of this city. But apparently it's not just this city. It's really across the country and potentially across the world.
Yeah, no doubt, man. We live in Dallas.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Dirk fan, you know?
Yeah.
Greatest Maverick ever, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Next to Sean Bradley. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I love Sean Bradley. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, he was in Space Jam.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the pinnacle of his career is in Space Jam. But, yeah, where does Dirk rank all time when it comes to players? I don't know. That would be a fun debate. Yeah. But, man, just a good guy. He has an incredible reputation around the Metroplex. And, yeah, I mean, I think the test of your character is not what you say about yourself, but what others say about you. And here's his peers that only speak positive of him. I think that says a lot.
That goes back to what I was alluding to kind of right before we got to the break. One of the things that I'm captivated by is a guy named David Brooks, and David Brooks wrote a book called The Road to Character. And what he does is he identifies two particular types of virtues. He says that there's resume virtues and then there's eulogy virtues. He argues that we're living in a culture today that gives emphasis upon the resume virtues. This was making sure that you excel at Microsoft Excel, making sure that you're proficient in Microsoft PowerPoint, wanting to make sure that you have those character quality, those traits, I should say, and those attributes that would look good on a resume. But we haven't given as much emphasis upon some of those eulogy virtues. Nobody wants to hear he was really proficient in PowerPoint at their funeral, right? Like, we want to hear this was a trustworthy guy. This was a very reliable person. This is someone that had integrity. And what Brooks argues, and what I think I would agree, is that we're living in a world today that gives emphasis to resume virtues over eulogy virtues. But when we look at the character of Dirk Nowitzki, it wasn't. He gave emphasis to the eulogy virtues, and because of that, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is better for it. I think I was struck, David, that even last night when they were playing all these videos, one of the things that came to light was the reality that he would give so much time around Christmas to these children's hospitals. Like, he would go and sneak in and wouldn't tell any of the press and would make sure that he could just sneak in. And he wasn't known as the NBA superstar, but he was known as Uncle Dirk. And I think that just speaks so much to his character.
And I love how you say how so eulogy virtues are really cool, but kind of going back to just the resume is just a lot to do with potential, what someone is maybe capable of. Yeah. But the eulogy virtues, you talk about how, like, this is what he did. Like, he walked it out. There's the actions and stuff. And I love that about Dirk because he embodied that, you know. He embodied about hanging out with these kids, you know, also just giving back to the community, pouring into just the areas that people are easily, like, they forget about that, you know. So I love that about him, man.
Yeah, and another, like, the humility aspect too. I think, and that wasn't just evidence on the court, but it was also evidence off the, like, Shane, it seemed like every offseason he was taking another pay cut so that the team could get in more stars. Like, this humility, and it was so starkly different than anything else that we see in the league, right? This is a guy that's taking pay cuts instead of trying to get his, right?
Yeah. And to stay a Maverick. Oh, I mean, from day one to last day. He was a Maverick the whole time. And, I mean, how rare is that?
Oh, my goodness.
And so, I mean, to me, to even be able to accomplish that, especially as you're getting older, and obviously his minutes were going down, his stats were going down, but he was making changes for the betterment of the team and to continue on with the team. I mean, that alone is such a rarity today. You know?
Okay, so as we're thinking about this from a Christian perspective now, for those that have ears to hear, we're looking at the character, we're looking at the person of Dirk Nowitzki. What are those things that you think a Christian can learn from Dirk? I'd be really interested to hear from you, David. Like, when you're looking at Dirk, is there a character quality? Is there a trait that you think, man, that is, like, he is emanating the fragrant aroma of Christ because of what he's doing in this?
There's one thing that comes to mind, and I would say just how he makes it not about himself.
Okay.
Very easily. Like, you see how he was trying not to make this retirement a big deal, but it just, of course, it's going to be Dirk Nowitzki. So I think he's always trying to point towards the team, per se, you know? and saying like, hey, it's not about me, it's about the city of Dallas, it's about the team and the impact that we're making here. At least that's what it seemed. That's what it comes off as, and I think that's a huge aspect from a Christ-like perspective. I mean, that is what we're supposed to do as believers, to walk that out, to point to Christ, right?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Shane, you got something?
Yeah, I can't help but think of Philippians 2, verse 3. I love that. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. So just piggybacking on what David said, is he was always putting others before himself, even to take the pay cut. Putting others before himself. And then remember the championship year where they brought down the Heat and LeBron, and
Chris
the
Bosh
and dynasty team that they had put together. They would become like the Yankees of basketball. Not to offend any New York Yankee fans out there.
No, dude,
right?
we can offend them. We can offend them because they're still doing it.
And then here's the Mavericks, took them down. And then, first of all, you get to see Dirk's singing skills. Do you remember when he sang "We Are the Champions"?
Oh my goodness!
But the whole time he was talking about, so and so did this, and Jet Terry did this. He was always pointing to what everyone else did in the series, other than himself.
It's so rich. Like I think one of the things I just take away when I think about Dirk, like there are a variety of qualities you can look at. Right? There's the humility. Like one of the things that's probably it for me. Like he is the humble giant, and he's a humble giant because one, he's pointing to others, but two, he's killing it on the floor. Like it's not. Sometimes when you hear about a Christian, you think, man, this is going to be a really good person. But if you probably have a Christian on a team, it's probably going to be less than desirable work output that you're going to get. Because we live in like this zero-sum game that you either have to be completely excellent and then you have no faith whatsoever, or really faithful and not have the competency necessary. What Stephen Covey says, that Dirk really did have that character, but he had that competency as well. He was going hard after being sure that he was a really good man and pointing to his teammates and being a great team player, like you were alluding to. But man, there was that character quality inside of him that really did and it made us better as a community. Like he was going and he was serving at just that video. It was stunning. I wish you'll have to go to thebriefing.net to watch this video of him serving these kids at I think it's at Scottish Rite Hospital, the children's hospital here in the Dallas area. Like he's pouring himself out and not wanting the media attention for it. And whenever I hear something like that, I always think, well, man, if that's what we didn't hear about, but now we finally hear about it, what else has he been doing all of these years that we'll never know? So all of that to say that we're glowing right now because we're sad because Dirk, I think he's playing his last game tonight in San Antonio, but we're grateful because he has forever changed the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that is something to rejoice in and be grateful about. But we've got to take a break. But we'd love to hear from you. If you have something that you want to share about Dirk Nowitzki, feel free to call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. Or you can jump on Facebook, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. Again, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. When we come back, we'll probably talk a little bit more about Dirk, but I'm really interested in trying to figure out what's going on in New York right now relative to the public health emergency that is measles. We'll be back right after this.
There is no more dangerous time than when things are going well. Remember Elijah on Mount Carmel? Fire came down. There was no doubt who was God, but what happened next? He went from amazing faith to a time of great fear and depression. Many Christians have been very thankful a certain Democratic candidate for president was not the one to nominate two replacements for the Supreme Court. But as with Elijah, times of great victory are also times of great danger. Moments like this are not the time to take it easy. This is not the time to let our guard down. This is a time to double down on our work in the community, to serve and pray and plan and invest in a better future. This is the time to join Point of View's Truth Team 360 to make sure today's promising gains are not lost tomorrow. Show your commitment to our future by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Ask to join the Truth Team. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you have joined us on this National Siblings Day. National Siblings Day of April 10th, 2019. We have been talking a little bit about Dirk, especially since we're here in the Dallas area and also airing in Minnesota right now. But nevertheless, there's a lot of weightiness. I guess in Minnesota, y'all have been talking about, just recovered from the Final Four right now, and all that was happening in Yahoo land. I guess with Virginia ended up winning, but we're going to transition and talk a little bit now about what's happening in New York City right now. So according to USA Today, New York City has declared a measles public health emergency. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio declared a public health emergency Tuesday in parts of Brooklyn's Williamsburg section following a measles outbreak affecting the Orthodox Jewish community. Unvaccinated people living in designated zip codes who may have been exposed to measles will be required to receive the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, MMR, to protect others from ongoing outbreak. The outbreak began in October, but many of these new cases being confirmed in the last 2 months, it seems. The vast majority of cases are children under 18 years of age. According to the CDC, there were 349 cases of measles in the U.S. last year, but so far this year, the number of cases has jumped to 465 and spans 19 states right now. And, there's this growing sense of tension right now, and I think it affects some religious communities specifically right now that are not wanting to get vaccinated. And so it raises the question, and I'll be interested, and I'll put it to Shane first. It raises the question of to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. That is the question, right? And because I think there's two sides of the argument that are kind of biblical, but I'll be really anxious to enter into this tension with you all. Of one side says, I'm just paying attention to what Proverbs 22 says, that I want to raise my child and train them in the way that they should go, and I'm protecting my child and going to great lengths. I'm not wanting one of these little ones to stumble, is what that's the biblical justification for not vaccinating your child. But then for vaccinating your child, the argument goes that this is the easiest way, one of the easier ways to love your neighbor, to make sure that they don't get some of these life-threatening diseases that science is that God in His grace has provided through science to be able to keep us from having to suffer from some of the effects of these viruses that have plagued human existence for ages before. And so help us enter into this tension, Shane, where we just really do have, it's just a small contingent of people is able to leverage the microphone to such an extent now that it's encompassing and affecting more than just this small contingent anymore.
Yeah, Nate, this is one of those where you really have to approach, I think, with a lot of grace because, you kind of mentioned it a while ago of God making medicine available and stuff is, there's two kind of forms of grace that we see in theology, kind of generic terms of those is common grace, which means the grace of God that's common for everyone, believers and unbelievers alike. So sunshine, oxygen, gravity, medicine, treatments, doctors. Peeps. That's right, peeps. Amen.
Reminder of God's goodness and grace.
Water, and then you got specific grace or special grace, and that would be like salvation type grace. Those who have been bought with the blood of Jesus have the Holy Spirit, God Himself. So common grace, it's one of those that it's so tough, because people have the right, obviously, to choose what they do with their kids and how they raise them up, but then there's common grace that God's provided. Medicines and preventions and things for these things not to spread and have to suffer in this way. But I know there's a great fear, and there's a lot of thoughts of these vaccinations actually cause more sicknesses and mental illnesses and special needs and those kind of things. And so, for us personally, I can only speak of what we personally do. We do choose to vaccinate all of our kids and take advantage of what God has provided through common grace.
David, anything to add to it?
Not too much, man. I think it's a different perspective for me just because my parents did decide to allow me to get vaccines and all that stuff. And I think it's a smart thing, especially with measles that are easily, they can spread very, very easily,
One of the things, so here's one of the things that I'd be interested in, because again, this is a recent phenomenon that we've decided that even though these vaccines have been, again, they've been available, but it's just recently started to take hold that individuals are choosing not to partake in this because of certain research that's come out. But even this research that's come out, and we can cite it if you'd like, it's all been debunked. Like the journals that have been published have issued retractions. There's been no substantive, and I could be wrong, and you're welcome to call in 800-351-1212. There's been no substantive research out that kind of that substantiates some of the claims that these vaccines are bad. And so one of the things, let's talk a little bit then about like the lack of trust, the skepticism and the doubt that we seem to be having now that's pervasive, and specifically, particularly in this particular instance, where we've got a contingent of people now that are skeptical of credentialed and experienced individuals now that are doing detriment and harm to the greater community. It just seems very problematic to me right now. Right, Shane?
Yeah, so I'll be careful. Maybe this comment would get some phone calls coming in. Just the context that my family and I live in. We live in the suburbs and with a lot of young families. Yeah. And, you remember the saying that there's an app for that? Remember that? Yeah. There's an app for that. Yeah. Now it's like there's an essential oil for that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I broke my arm.
Oh, he's going after my essential oil. Watch out.
I broke my arm. Well, just rub some frankincense on it. I mean, come on, give me a break, And so I think there's just that more of like, maybe overly like all natural, just eat right. Get your back popped, your neck popped, and everything's going to work out. And I think it's some of that, maybe wanting to return back to all natural things, which I don't think is necessarily all harmful. Yeah. But once again, God's common grace has allowed for this. And then I think just the dynamics of change that's a part of this, this is not a political statement, but just the more we travel as Americans international, and the more internationals that come here, you just see it. I mean, every year I go to Africa, and back in September I was in the Congo, and I come back and had a pretty vicious stomach virus. And I'll never forget going in the doctor, and it's like, where have you traveled recently? And I was like, I was in the DRC. And it's almost like they panicked, left the room and came back in with hazmat suits on, But it's just the more we travel and more we become international as a whole, these things are going to happen.
Yeah, that's the distrust, the skepticism, the doubt now towards just credentialed experts. It seems as though it's increasing in nature now, David. Why do you think there's a rise in skepticism here in the American populace today? We continue to hear more about flat Earth people. We continue to hear more about questioning the moon landing. I wish I was joking about this, but there's just a growing number of people that are giving rise to some of these conspiracy theories. And I think a byproduct of that is doubting the medical research that substantiates the claim that these vaccines don't have any vicious side effects, but are good for us, that are common graces that are given to us to keep us from the sickness that would try to rob us of the life that God has given to us.
Right, and I actually even have a former teammate, that he would always preach against getting vaccines, and he's never had one, apparently. So, I mean, he's still kind of healthy. I mean, that I know of at least, but he doesn't travel anywhere. He doesn't travel just basically outside of Texas, really. Wow. I think he goes to a few places, but nowhere internationally. And I've asked him, hey, man, why don't you want to get one or believe in that or whatever? And he's like, no, it's just I don't want to risk getting sick of anything else. And I'm like, you're actually higher risk to catch something than you are. And it's, I don't know, but you can also hear from the arguments of is this affecting our immune system? Is this allowing for even stronger diseases and viruses to take place in our bodies, right? So there's both sides of the arguments, and I don't have too much of a side of an argument other than I do get my vaccines just because. I mean, heck, I didn't get a flu shot till maybe last year, honestly, just so I could hold my knees.
I don't understand. Do you have a rationale? Why is there so much distrust? That's one of the things that, because again, it's not just the vaccine debate. I mean, it really is. Like, there's so much distrust now, and you can see the levels of it as well. So a generation ago, that 50% of Americans would say that they trusted their neighbor. And now that number today is at 33%. And if you look at millennials, that number is at 19%. There's just this general distrust that we have now, this built-in skepticism and skepticism, what it always does, without fail, skepticism always isolates you, and skepticism always paralyzes you. It keeps you from moving because you're doubting everything. And when you doubt everything, you don't want to move anything. You don't want to change the status quo. And so I'll be interested. I'd love to hear from you. What if you have a side on the vaccine debate? I'd love to hear from that. Or if you have a reason as to why there's this rising skepticism, love to hear from you. 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Many of you have followed First Liberty's case before the Supreme Court of the United States over the Bladensburg World War I Veterans Memorial. We hope the case will provide much-needed clarity to the interpretation of the First Amendment. The framers intended for the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to guard against the government establishing a national church. Read more broadly, it also prevents state officials from coercing the religious beliefs and actions of its citizens. Unfortunately, as Justice Clarence Thomas has said, this is an area of the law that is in hopeless disarray. We can lay the blame at the feet of a case from 1971 called Lemon v. Kurtzman. That decision has led to a variety of confusing court-created tests. Local officials, not knowing what to do, often ban religion. That kind of hostility to religion is something the founders never intended. We propose an alternative, that the Supreme Court replace those tests with an alternative one more in keeping with what the founders had in mind. Unless the state coerces someone into a religious belief or exercise, or enacts laws or policies that purport to actually establish an official religion, there is no violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Passive displays do nothing to coerce anyone into belief or religious exercise. They just stand there, reminding us of the service and sacrifice of something we would forget if we did not see a visible reminder. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children. Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people. on a monthly financial basis and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers, as they have become like family to me.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to Point of View, also known as the Preds fan show. Coming in, no, it's not. Nashville Predators playing the Dallas Stars tonight. It's going to be a glorious and great thing. I was joking with David earlier. We don't know Shane's loyalties, where they lie, or if Shane's just not a big hockey fan, which is all right as well. But I just know that my Nashville Predators are on the march tonight. Smashville is coming to Dallas, and the D-Town Boogie is about to be is about to experience what sorrow into the night feels like, and we will figure out if joy will come in the morning. But if joy does come in the morning, it will be in Nashville and not in Dallas. But nevertheless, we have been talking about vaccines. To vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That 'tis the question. Well, for those that didn't vaccinate, it appears as though there is a public health emergency now that has been declared in New York City because of significant rise in measles and cases of measles, to the extent that in 2018 alone, there were 349 cases of measles. But in so far this year, and we're only, I guess, 4 months into this year. Yeah, it is April. 4 months into this year, we already have 465 cases that has spanned 19 states thus far. And there's been a pretty significant concentration in 3 particular neighborhoods in New York. And, Shane, we were talking about there's 2 camps that have, especially within evangelical circles, that have kind of fomented out of this vaccine debate, where some are saying, I'm just protecting my child, going to great lengths to be able to make sure, because I've been tasked by God to train this child the way they should go, to not cause this little one to stumble, on the no vaccine side. And then on the pro-vaccine side, they're saying that this is the easiest way to love your neighbor. Make sure you don't infect them by making sure they get vaccinated themselves. And so we find ourselves in the midst of this debate. But one of the things that, even though this was a public health emergency, there's a silent alarm going off relative to the trust levels and skepticism that we have here in the U.S. as of late. And I'd be really interested to hear your comments on this relative to maybe why. Why do you think there's this growing mistrust and skepticism that we have here in the U.S.?
Yeah, Nick, because everything is fake news. Everything. No, I think there is. I mean, right. We're definitely in a season and culture where you question everything. You question every news outlet. There, and I think we think there's an agenda behind everything. So we question that. That creeps over into the church, where we question the agenda of the church. We question the Bible. We question everything with doctrine, theology. And I mean, we even see it in actions where, like, if you just do something nice for someone, they want to, why are you doing that? What's your agenda? So there's a distrust for everything. And I think it's because probably naturally in our flesh, we're motivated and attracted by fear-based things, instead of a faith-based. Spirit drives us to faith-based. Our flesh drives us to fear-based stuff. And fear is a powerful motivator. I mean, you think about a documentary comes out on the dangers of eating meat. We all watch it. And so I think it's just a natural cynicism that's arising, a questioning of everything, which I think that's not always bad, a questioning, but I think we question everything. There's cynicism. Everything's fake news. Everything has an agenda, and I think it's just across the board in every walk of life.
I think that, but here's where I push back a little bit, because it seems as though it's so paralyzing, right?
It is.
And what's frustrating to me and audacious, I would argue, is that they're willing. It's not simply just a skepticism and a doubt that keeps them from going the norm, and in this case, not only the norm, but also the substantiated, scientifically backed claims that vaccines are good, that vaccines are helpful, that there's not any known side effects that we have thus far that are substantiated by science. But what they do then is they turn to this stuff that's not, right? Like, and again, we're poking fun at essential oils, and essential oils aren't relative to this conversation relative to vaccines, but they point to just these herbal remedies or just this other stuff that's just it's just not helpful. And I don't know if it's just, I'm just confused by this because, again, I guess I know we're not rational beings. I know we're emotional beings that sometimes act rationally, but this just seems completely irrational and off the rocker right now. And I really would love to hear a strong argument for the other side of this debate. And so you can call in 800-351-1212. I know we're just in the Dallas and Minnesota market right now, but I'd just love to hear the other side of this argument, why they would go to great lengths to not vaccinate, because there's just a general interest. And so David, touch on this a little bit more, especially from the Christian perspective. How do you share the good news in a fake news era, right? If we're willing to write off something that's substantive and something that's rich and something that's backed by history as well as by science, as vaccines, and then you have the gospel message, which, I mean, let's just call it for what it is outlandish. The God of the universe sends his son to die and then he raises again. Like, that's outlandish. Like, how do you communicate the gospel in a fake news era?
Yeah, and that's the challenge a lot of times. But you see a lot of these ministries doing, all these different strategies, different ways and how to communicate that. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to understand is that I know there's a few ministries that I work with that they do indirect to direct kind of deal. And that's just something that we've been learning. What does that look like? Indirect is kind of like what you do. Direct is like who you are. And so what does that look like to actually be more attractive in that way, but not to have too much of an agenda, but just to show like this is who we are, right? So we are followers of Christ. We want to love this community. We want to give back to this community. And I think a lot of times it just takes time, especially with so much noise, so much people having those agendas and having been hurt through those agendas, right? Kind of like what Shane was saying. It's very, we're very fear motivated as a culture through everything that we do, almost like marketing. Everything is always like, if you don't have this, you're not going to be liked.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, you're not going to be liked.
Yeah.
The indirect. So we focus on the indirect things in our lives, what we do. And then we have an identity crisis.
Yeah.
So
it kind of I guess you can make that point, right? Because fear, there's classically there's two responses to fear, right? There's the fight or flight.
Yeah.
And I guess the way a marketer would put it is, we'll help you fight it with X product, or we'll help you get away from it with Y product, right? And so
avoid the freeze.
Yeah. And which is just. It's just very interesting. But we got to take a break right now. But when we come back from the break, we're going to open it up to phone calls. I'm really interested to hear a substantive, just a good faith reason as to why you wouldn't vaccinate your child. I'd be really interested to hear that, just because I know that there are. Again, I'm not trying to bedevil the other side. I'm not trying to demonize the other side. I just think that there's got to be a better reason, rather than just other figurative science that you continue to hear that just kind of builds upon these fears of what could happen if you're. And again, I understand it. Like, I understand going to great lengths to protect your child. My goodness, I can understand it. I just would love to hear it worked out in a way that kind of applies to our particular argument. And so you can call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. And we'll be back right after this.
Why should you become a partner with Point of View Radio? Because for decades, this team has made a significant difference in lives and communities across the nation. Because America is dying for lack of biblical wisdom about life and culture. You should give because your gift will make possible cutting-edge information on issues that matter, information you won't hear anywhere else. Why? Because your gift will change lives, because you'll influence our culture with biblical truth, and because you can make a difference for the future. Our nation needs a truth team very badly. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Click on Join the Truth Team and choose your level of support. Pointofview.net. Or call 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Point of View will continue after this.
I I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now,
Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you've decided to join us on this Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 day. It is a big day. And then I just need you to know, for our national audience, know that there is going to be a big announcement that's happening in the second segment of this hour that you're going to have to tune in for a big announcement relative to the Millennial Roundtable. So you'll want to stick around and listen to that. But while you stick around, know that we're going to have quite a lively conversation. We're going to be talking about everything from the public health emergency that was declared in New York yesterday due to the measles outbreak that is happening, that is plaguing the city right now. What is a Christian understanding of the vaccination debate? So we're going to get into the pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine debate, and we'd love to hear from you as well as to your comments. Is it should a Christian to love their neighbor get vaccinated? Or is it right for us to have skepticism towards vaccines in order to protect our child? You can call in and join that conversation when we start that here shortly. 800-351-1212. Again, 800-351-1212. And then we'll also be talking about loneliness. Specifically, there's just a lot of new research that's coming out relative to loneliness. We'll be talking about that a little bit during the second half of the first hour. And then one of the big studies I can't wait to hear about, talk with you all about, is Christianity losing ground. There was a new study that was published in the New York Post relative to the size of the Christian population comparative to the entire nation. And so we'll be talking about that as well. But for those of you that weren't available to catch up with us during the first hour because we weren't playing in your market, it pretty much was summed up in this. Now you all know that we're based out of here in Dallas, and you know that during the first hour, we're really only aired in Dallas as well as in Minneapolis. And so in a shocking twist, we talked about how much the Predators are going to beat the Dallas Stars tonight. Man. That's pretty much all we talked about during the first hour. We talked about how the Nashville Predators are starting the march to the Stanley Cup. And if I had music, and we would be able to play that music and it would be very triumphant. I'm thinking like Europe, the final countdown or something like that. That would be playing right now when we're talking about the Nashville Predators. But nevertheless, the Predators start their march, and their march starts in Nashville tonight as we make our way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And even though I have loyalties to the Nashville Predators and find myself here in Dallas, just know that I will and always be a Predators fan till the day I die, and cannot wait to rub it in the faces of everyone here within those 7 million people of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and probably get my butt beat because of it. But nevertheless, let's jump into the day's news, shall we? Or actually, I need to introduce the guest that we actually have here in studio at the Roundtable. We've got Shane Pruitt, author of 9 Common Lies Christians Believe. Shane, how are you?
Doing well, Nick. It's good to be on again, my friend.
So good. So good to have another Preds fan.
I had a quick question. What is hockey? We live in Texas, man.
We play football,
basketball, and baseball.
No way.
What is hockey?
No way.
What is that?
Okay.
There's no ice down here.
Hey, Satan, get behind me. Satan, get behind me, okay? And then we also have David Fraga as well. David, how are you?
Doing great, man. You got a little carried away there, didn't you?
No, I didn't get carried away enough, my friend. I'm going to start a chant. Let's go Preds here in a second. But nevertheless, let's jump into it, shall we? Let's talk about about the vaccination debate that's happening right now, or more specifically, let's talk about the public health emergency that was declared by New York Mayor Bill de Blasio declared a public health emergency Tuesday in parts of Brooklyn's Williamsburg section following a measles outbreak affecting the Orthodox Jewish community. Unvaccinated people living in the designated zip codes who may have been exposed to measles will be required to receive the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine to protect others from the ongoing outbreak. Some comparative numbers to help us understand scope and scale of this. According to the CDC, there were 349 cases of measles in the U.S. in 2018. So far this year, only 4 months into the year, we have 465 cases of measles, and it has spanned 19 states thus far. And so we're starting to see this sizable outbreak of it. And then it really, for me, like the way that I'm framing the question is this simply is the vaccination debate? We're continuing to see this rise in the vaccination debate. Is vaccinating your child simply the easiest way to love your neighbor, or is non-vaccination simply a way to protect your child against unintended consequences? We'd love to hear from you. Specifically, I'll just show my cards right now. I am on the pro-vaccinate side of the debate. I think the research is just so substantively clear relative to there not being those unintended consequences and the side effects that have been propagated by certain anti-vaccine individuals. And it just seems as though it is very clear that this is one of the easiest ways to love your neighbor as yourself, by vaccinating your child, which in turn not only protects your child but also protects the children in your neighborhood as well. Whereas there's others on the anti-vaccination side that have put forward the idea that I've been the one tasked by God to protect my child and to train up my child in the way that they should go. And we shouldn't vaccinate our child because there's certain research out there that I think that I'm almost positive, unless I'm not reading something, and you're more than willing to call in and help me understand, is just they're worried about the unintended consequences of some of these vaccinations that they're putting in their child. But we'd love to hear from you. What is your point of view on the vaccination debate from a Christian perspective? You can call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. You can jump over on Facebook, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. See my face, go right underneath my face and put a comment or question. And what you share online, we'll try to get to over air as well. And so, David, let's jump it off with you, shall we, in this debate right now, because this is a very heated debate, and we can understand why it's a heated debate, right? It deals with children, and many parents, all parents, are going above and beyond to be able to protect their child. But it just seems it's just really difficult to understand why individuals would withhold vaccinating their child, not only potentially harming them, but also harming the children that come in their child's way.
Right. So I think there's a lot of what we were talking about earlier, just a lot of fear with it all. Just, there could be so many side effects. There could be so much of this. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And when that becomes the main focus, I think there's a lot of just, neglecting what the actual, what are the benefits here, right? And we see more of the short term rather than like the whole picture, the long term of it all. And I do see how, for the most part, medicine is there to help us, not to harm us. Yeah. Of course, you can see all these other medications where, you're probably trying to get people hurt in some way, but medicine is there to help us, right? And you see a lot of the biblical narrative of just people using remedies, right, and using whatever it takes to just live a healthy life, right? So.
There's just a lot there, and so we're starting to get some phone calls. But before we take a phone call, we're going to have to go to a break. But when we come back from the break, we're going to be continuing to take some. We'll take some of your phone calls. Start on some of those. You can call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. Where do you fall in the vaccination debate? For it, against it, questioning it? You can call in 800-351-1212. Or jump over on facebook.com/pointofviewradio. When we come back, we're going to take some of your phone calls because I'm just interested. And plus, one of the things that we talked about in the previous hour is that even though there was a public health emergency that went out because of this, there's a silent alarm about the growing distrust here in the U.S. But we'll talk about that and more right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Nearly half of American adults report sometimes or always feeling lonely. That same study by Cigna also found that nearly the same percentage reported feelings of being left out. That is why they say loneliness is at epidemic levels. 25 years ago, I wrote a book, Signs of Warning, Signs of Hope, making a number of predictions for the future. Chapter 8 set forth the case for a coming crisis of loneliness. Years later, Philip Slater wrote about the pursuit of loneliness. The U.S. Census Bureau documented the increasing number of adults living alone. Dan Keeley talked about living together loneliness in one of his books. And Roberta Hestonese coined the term crowded loneliness. This trend was there for anyone to see if they began reading some of the sociological literature. Of course, lots of people have written about the crisis of loneliness since then. Robert Putnam wrote about it in his famous book, Bowling Alone. He argues that people need to be connected in order for our society to function effectively. Putnam concludes social capital makes us smarter, healthier, safer, richer, and better able to govern a just and stable democracy. In his book, Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal, Senator Ben Sasse laments that our traditional tribes and social connectedness are in collapse. All of this comes at a cost. Julianne Holt-Lundstedt has published research showing that people with weaker social ties had a 50% increased likelihood of dying earlier than those with stronger ones. Being disconnected, she says, is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The loneliness epidemic has arrived. Pastors and churches need to address this dangerous trend. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From 20th Century Fox and Franklin Entertainment, Breakthrough, starring Chrissy Metz, based on a true story. Breakthrough, rated PG, in theaters Wednesday, April 17th. Point of View, Truth Team 360, Dr. Sean McDowell.
We clearly live in difficult times, especially for Christians. Sometimes it feels like the culture is just turning against us quickly. We need to speak up with compassion, but we need to speak up with truth in the way that Jesus did. That's one reason why I'm a big fan of Point of View, is they're dealing with cutting-edge, controversial subjects that the church sometimes doesn't want to deal with. But they do their homework, they do it informed. They also do it in a way that's practical so we understand the issues but know what we can do about them. Ministries like Point of View can only survive with the help of listeners. One of the reasons I think Point of View is so valuable is because they just deal with the cutting issues of the day in a manner that's informed, in a manner that's gracious, and in a manner that's making a difference. Point of View is standing up for truth, and they need your help.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts, joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Shane Pruitt, author of 9 Common Lies Christians Believe, as well as David Fraga here in the Dallas area. We have been talking about vaccines, specifically to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. That is the question. And we opened up the phone lines, and in a non-shocking twist, you all have a point of view. And so to be true to our word, we're going to be hearing some of your point of view on this. And I'm going to go back and forth with some of you all, as well as the crew that is joining me in studio. So if you'd like to air your point of view, you can do so at 800-351-1212 to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. We'd love to hear your comments as well. So let's go ahead and let's go Angel here in Texas, shall we? Angel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Hey, Angel, where are you in Texas?
El Paso, Texas.
Okay. But here's the bigger question. you're going for the Predators tonight over the Stars, aren't you?
Well, I don't know.
No, I'll take that as a Predators fan. Good deal, Angel. Good deal. Another Predators fan. So help us to understand. Give us your point of view on the vaccination debate.
Basically, what I think is that we need to actually make a thorough research of what is in the vaccinations, because I actually have this same debate with my wife. I'm kind of like in between, in between vaccinating and not vaccinating my children. And, of course, I love them. I want them to be protected, but I also don't want to hurt them with, thinking that I'm trying to protect them. And, if there's actually, something in these vaccinations that, may cause my children harm. I have 1-year-old twins. He just turned one not too long ago. And, of course, these kinds of, topics come up with me and my wife as far as, how to protect our children. They're at a very young age, and, we're trying to look out for them just like any prudent parent would. And, as we were discussing this as far as the measles outbreak and all that, we're kind of, debating. I'm kind of against it, and she wants to vaccinate them. But I would like for there to be an actual research of what is in the vaccination, so that parents can know what or what is in the vaccination, so that if it's going to actually do well for the children or if it's going to harm them. Because I definitely don't want them to be catching something else. Yeah. Because I'm trying to protect them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's kind of kept us from being able to have kind of some of these disagreements and conversations. Like even though I come down on the pro-vaccinate side, I have no ill motive towards the individuals that are on the other side. So I completely understand the desire to, my goodness, the lengths parents would go to protect their child knows no bounds. And so I think this is just a prudent parent question that many people are asking. A growing number of people are asking if the research is correct. And I think one of the things that I'm just continually befuddled by, and not in the negative sense, just really inquisitive towards, is this idea of the research relative to vaccines is so sound and has been so substantiated and proven over the years. But we also know that when we don't vaccinate when parents don't vaccinate their kids, I don't want to pretend like I'm their parent. When parents don't vaccinate their children, we've seen the effects of not vaccinating a child, and it's far greater than it is. The harm that could be done is far greater than vaccinating your child. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and Gail brings up, thank you so much for your phone call, Angel. We're going to jump over here to Gail, because Gail brings up a really great point, too, that I think is something similar, and she does so on Facebook. So Gail says, have you read what's in the vaccines? Which, yes, but I'm not a medical doctor. Me and Shane, we're doctors, but we can just prescribe really good books. We'll prescribe a really good book recommendation for you, but that's about the extent of our PhD doctorates. And then it kind of goes into, she kind of elaborates, and she says, how can you allow things to be put into your child? Ideally, medicine should be to help us, which, again, I would be interested, Gail, you're listening on, I guess, on the internet right now. I don't understand. Can you help me understand where are those links? Where are those surveys that you've read, that research that you've read that indicates that it harms you? Is because everything that I've read, and this is not me trying to be condescending, this is just everything that I've read has been disproven. That's relative towards the not vaccinating your child will be better for them. So I'd be really interested to hear what you would say towards that. So let's go ahead and jump into, let's go up to Illinois right now. We got Judy in Illinois. Judy, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, Judy, what's your point of view?
I am very, very strongly in favor of vaccinations. I lived through the days when polio was rampant. I got it. I went through, from age 4 to 14, I had multiple surgeries, and I spent 42 weeks in the hospital as a result of polio. I get very, very disturbed when I hear of somebody who doesn't vaccinate their children against polio. Mm-hmm. They don't understand what the effects are if they don't vaccinate. I lived through all the childhood diseases, and there are still people who die from measles.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I lived through it. But I see no benefit in not vaccinating your children, and I think it is not fair to the children. The parents are not doing their job when they're not vaccinating their family.
Well, Judy, thank you so much for your phone call. We really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Enjoy time in Illinois.
Okay.
And so let's keep on going, shall we? Because again, I think Shane, I think we can agree. Like, there's just this sense of resoluteness that was with Judy at that point of like she's lived through it. She's seen when individuals haven't vaccinated their children. She herself has seen these aren't just children, but these were her peers at a time, her playground mates that suffered some of the consequences of not vaccinating their child. So I guess that's where that sturdiness and that resoluteness comes within her voice.
Yeah, definitely. You could hear the angst in her voice. Yeah. And, and I know, going back to Angel's call and even the Facebook listener of what's in these vaccines and I'm assuming, and I remember what my grandpa used to say about the word assume, but yeah. I'm assuming that before these things ever hit the market, they go through a lot of testing, right? I mean, it's not Jim Bob coming up with some kind of vaccine cocktail in his shed and putting it out on the market. You know what I mean? And so I think surely these things have been tested. A lot of protocols they have to pass through and hoops they have to jump through before they ever hit the market, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just read the book Bad Blood, and I don't know if our listeners are aware of Bad Blood. It's about there's an HBO documentary on Theranos, I think is how you pronounce it, the blood treatment. But nevertheless, that's a whole different point of just the loops individuals have to go to either circumvent the regulations or to, if they go through them, which most do, just the lengths you have to go to be able to prove your point. Let's jump down to. Actually, we don't have enough time. We gotta go to a break. But I did want to make our special announcement before we go to break. Coming up in May, we are moving the Millennial Roundtable to Tuesday. So for those of you that have been listening for the last little stretch over the past almost 2 years now, we've been having the Millennial Roundtable. Exceedingly grateful for the patience as well as the grace of Kirby and the team here at Point of View to give up the chair once a week. But what we've decided to do is we're transitioning it over to Tuesday. And so we want you to come with us. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking a little bit more about what this Tuesday show is going to look like, the Millennial Roundtable. You're going to have some great new things that we're going to be adding to it. It's going to be a phenomenal show, which some of you are saying, well, it's about time that it became a good show. I've been putting up with you for so long. Well, get ready, because there'll still be some of the basic components that you've come to know and to put up with relative to the Wednesday Millennial Roundtable, i.e. my corny jokes and trying to learn to talk a little bit slower. But then also we'll be continuing to talk about the news of the day, and specifically how can we think about the news of the day from a biblical perspective. But that's the big announcement, so we'll have to take a break right now. But when we come back from the break, we'll continue talking about the vaccination debate. We want to hear from you, to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, and what's your reason why? 800-351-1212. We'll be back right after this.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you have joined us for this debate we have been having relative to vaccines. I think sometimes I was talking with some friends the other day, and as you can tell, I just like to argue. I like to go back and forth and debate, but there's no mean-spiritedness within me. I think that's just coming from the schooling side. I think, Shane, you can probably relate with this. At the end of the day, like in school, like debating is just a value-neutral thing, and it's just trying to get to the truth, and it really is just detaching your identity from your ideas and really just kind of wrestling with the truth and hopefully able to come out on top and be changed by it. But nevertheless, we have been talking about vaccinations right now. To vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That is the question. And we have been taking some of your phone calls. 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. Where do you fall on the vaccination debate? For those that, what I find striking is that I just don't understand why you wouldn't vaccinate. I just don't think the science is there relative to kind of the hazards of the vaccines that we're putting into our bodies. And we also have seen the side effects, and many people know people that have experienced what happens when you don't vaccinate and you contract some of these diseases and viruses. They're just very detrimental to experiencing healthy and desirable life. And so we're going to continue taking some of your phone calls, and then we'll also be taking some of your comments and questions on Facebook.com/pointofviewradio, Facebook.com/pointofviewradio. There's been a couple of you all that have mentioned something. So Rachel says vaccines are not tested as you think they are. Also, did you know that in 2011, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in a DPT injury case that vaccines are unavoidably safe? The Supreme says they are unsafe. Well, I didn't know that. We'll have to do some research on that and look that up. But again, we know what happens when you don't have these vaccines in place, that many people are hurt by it. But I'd like to hear from you all as well. So let's continue taking some of your phone calls right now. We'll jump down to Tina in Georgia right now. Tina, are you there?
I am.
Tina, how far away are you right now? We'll just go with the softball question. From Augusta right now, where hundreds of thousands of people are flocking down to your beautiful state to experience a great golf tournament this weekend.
I'm in Savannah, so I'm a couple hours from Augusta.
Oh, it is. I was down there this time last year. I went on Tuesday, or I guess 366 days ago. I went to Augusta on Tuesday last year. Absolutely beautiful. But I'm already telling you what you already know right now. But nevertheless, what is your point of view, Tina?
Okay, my point of view is I believe that vaccines are unsafe.
Okay.
I believe that because there have been over $4 billion paid out for vaccine injuries, our autism rate, and I don't believe that vaccines are the only cause of autism, but it's gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 36. That's a more serious epidemic than any of these childhood diseases that they're trying to vaccinate against, especially measles. When I was young, measles was something that you just, everybody in the school you got over it, you got lifetime immunity from it. There is so much to be said, but we're putting massive amounts of aluminum, formaldehyde, we're putting aborted fetal tissue and animal tissues into our children when we vaccinate them. I think the more people look into it, if they do, and the social media is they're censoring some of it now. But I would encourage people to, watch the movie Vax. There's now 9 hours of a deposition of Dr. Stanley Plotkin available on YouTube. He's pro-vaccine, of course. He's a creator of vaccines. But he did a 9-hour deposition in a case where the parents were not on the same page about vaccines.
Tina, correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't Vaxxed been debunked?
No, sir. I do not believe that at all.
Okay. I was under the impression that the research that substantiated the documentary Vaxxed was not only retracted from the medical journal, but then there was just a pretty harsh retraction from it based on that movie, or the documentary, rather.
Yeah, not true. In fact, that we have a whistleblower from the CDC, I believe it's Dr. Thompson, who admitted that their research found that there was a link with vaccines and autism, especially among African American boys, was even higher, and that they all got in a room and they burned all of the data about that to keep it secret. But he kept all the stuff on his hard drive. He submitted it to congressmen, and there are congressmen who have spoken out about this and really wanted to do something. The other thing is that our CDC actually owns the patents on some of the vaccines. You cannot, I don't know how we got to the point where we have a regulatory agency that has a vested financial interest in what they're regulating.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm interested in, and again, I go back to the idea of like just causation doesn't equal correlation, right? The causation correlation back and forth. And the reality, just because you're doing something doesn't mean it caused the other thing, right? And so like, especially when it comes to vaccines, it's often tied to a rise in autism, but all the science that I've seen doesn't seem to indicate that there's a direct connection, cause and effect with the rise in autism tied with vaccines. That there could be a variety of issues that have caused this uptick in autism, which is just awful. The fact that there's individuals that are having to endure through this, but I just haven't been able to find anything that's been able to substantiate or point back to the fact that that's vaccines that have caused that.
Yeah, people can. I think one of the great information sites would be Highwire, YouTube. Well, I don't know if he puts that out anywhere else. It's run by Del Bigtree, who was the producer of Vax, who formerly was the producer of the TV show The Doctors. Mm-hmm. And he has on a lot of doctors that talk about the research. But one thing you know for sure, I would think, would be they tell us not even to use deodorants and things that contain aluminum because of the link with causing Alzheimer's or dementia. And yet we're injecting children sometimes in the first day of life with large quantities of aluminum. You don't have to be a doctor to know that's not going to be healthy.
Thanks so much, Tina, for your phone call. Man, I need I need deodorant. My goodness, I'm a sweater. If I drink my coffee too quickly, I will start sweating profusely. I know you're laughing about that, but that's a real thing that happens. I literally every morning I go to QT, and this is unsolicited advertising. I go to QT, I get a Mighty Mocha and then a cup of ice, and I only get halfway through my Mighty Mocha before I start perspiring a little bit, and then I just pour the ice in there, and it cools me right on down. I'm like a hurricane. So nevertheless, let's keep on going, shall we? Let's go to Dawn right now. Dawn, are you there?
Hi. Yes, sir, I am.
Hey, Dawn. What's your point of view?
Well, I do believe that the vaccine for children, we should do it. I put all my kids through it. My concern is the latest and greatest ones. Like my daughter, like I said, she is a CNA, and so she gets a different strand of flu virus that she has to take through the hospital, and people still get sick from it. And it's really frustrating because they say, well, that's a different strand. And I'm thinking, why don't we just have one for, to cover them, especially these people. She's taking care of dementia patients. And so that just boggles my mind. And so I avoid the flu shot altogether because I'll take the risk. And then another thing is that new HPV virus thing. My youngest son got the first dose of it, but you have to go back for, I think, 2 or 3. And that one scares me because, is it good? Is it bad? It's just like the vapor things. They say it's better than cigarettes, and then they come out and say, oh, this is really bad for you. You shouldn't be doing it. So, it's of course, my son is older now, so he makes his own decisions. But, it's just always blowing my mind away because it's like they present a new vaccine or something, And then next thing you know, they're turning around and recalling it seems like.
Yeah.
So,
Again, a part of that is just the medical advances that are happening so rapidly right now. And I'm glad I'm a book doctor instead of a real doctor, even though I'll claim to be a real doctor when I'm on a plane, just because I want to be that guy. But I am grateful, just because again it goes back to what Shane was talking about, the idea of common grace, that it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous, and it appears as though vaccines and some of these gifts from science and medicine are good gifts from God that's allowed us to be able to experience life and then hopefully point to the giver of life. But Don, thank you so much for your phone call. We'll continue taking phone calls. To vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That is the question. Right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Many of you have followed First Liberty's case before the Supreme Court of the United States over the Bladensburg World War I Veterans Memorial. We hope the case will provide much-needed clarity to the interpretation of the First Amendment. The framers intended for the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to guard against the government establishing a national church. Read more broadly, it also prevents state officials from coercing the religious beliefs and actions of its citizens. Unfortunately, as Justice Clarence Thomas has said, this is an area of the law that is in hopeless disarray. We can lay the blame at the feet of a case from 1971 called Lemon v. Kurtzman. That decision has led to a variety of confusing court-created tests. Local officials, not knowing what to do, often ban religion. That kind of hostility to religion is something the founders never intended. We propose an alternative, that the Supreme Court replace those tests with an alternative one more in keeping with what the founders had in mind. Unless the state coerces someone into a religious belief or exercise, or enacts laws or policies that purport to actually establish an official religion, there is no violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Passive displays do nothing to coerce anyone into belief or religious exercise. They just stand there, reminding us of the service and sacrifice of something we would forget if we did not see a visible reminder. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I think that Point of View has done a tremendous job in helping send information that is crucial for parents and for people that are, just going about their work every day and not really understanding the culture war that we are in. And without that information, moms and pops all across this nation would not know what's going on. They are not going to hear it from the regular media.
Clearly, I think that we are operating in a culture that is at every turn seeing the media and Hollywood push an agenda on them, and you folks present the truth. And not only do you present the truth, you present it in a gracious way that helps people to understand the facts.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to we almost had a hot take problem right there. I don't know if you all can resonate with sometimes you just forget that the microphone is on. And I almost forgot that the microphone is on. And you would have caught me talking about, actually, we were talking about Roy Moore, of all playing, because there's been talk about him potentially putting his hat back in the ring. But nevertheless, we are back on Point of View. So grateful that you have decided to join us. I'm joined at the Millennial Roundtable by David Fraga as well as Shane Pruitt. We've been talking about vaccinations. To vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That is the question. And so we've got some Facebook comments as well as some individuals. Let's just be honest for a second. You all are very passionate about this. We've found this out. And so if you've tried to call in, you might be getting a busy signal right now because there are no lines that are available. So keep on calling in. Make Steve work. Make Steve work this half hour or this hour rather. And then if you get a busy signal, you can go over on facebook.com/pointofviewradio and you can share some comments as well. What you share online, we'll share over the air as well. And so we have Tara. I think there's 2 R's in Tara. I've never seen that before. That's great. So Tara says, I think it's important to not make any decisions based on fear, whether you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. I'm a mother of 3, and my viewpoint has adjusted slightly with each one. Both sides play fear. Parents must research for themselves. Tara, I completely agree with you, right? Shane, I think we can all agree with that. One, we don't want to cast aspersions on the other side, just because we can prove a point without degrading the other side. I think that's one of the beautiful things about here in the Great American Experiment, and plus just with logic, period, we don't have to disparage the other side to prove our point. The second is from a biblical perspective, we know that fear is not healthy, that perfect love has cast out all fear, that fear oftentimes makes us do things that we wouldn't necessarily do. Hence the reason why we continue to hear Joshua, when he's about to enter the promised land, it's 3 times, I believe, at least 3 times in Joshua 1, that God says, do not be afraid, take courage. And so I think we can all agree that we shouldn't play to fear regardless of whatever side you're on, and to be able to just do the research necessary to come to a right decision.
Yeah, definitely. It's been said before that depending on what translation you have, that there's 365 verses in the Bible that says, "Don't be afraid, do not fear, take heart." Those kind of courage type verses, one for every day of the year. The longer we talk about this, Nick, I kind of land what you started with. I think it's a love your neighbor.
Yeah.
And so with that, the longer we talk about this, I think I would fight for the rights, because I love my neighbors, of them making the choice not to vaccinate, but I would also fight for the rights of the neighbors who do choose to and are shamed by those who don't,
Yeah. That's good. Let's keep on going. We'll continue taking some of your phone calls. Again, you can call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212, or Facebook.com Point of View Radio. Sorry, I saw somebody writing in all caps, and so it alarmed me. They're yelling at me through the computer screen. So that kind of caught my attention. But nevertheless, let's keep on going, and let's jump down to Karen in Florida right now. Karen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Beautiful Florida. Whereabouts in Florida?
Oh, we're in the Panhandle.
Oh, okay. Close to Mayo?
No, we're between Tallahassee and Pensacola.
Oh, okay. It's actually not fair that you're there right now. So we're just going to have to let you get off the phone right now. No, I'm just kidding, Karen. I'm just kidding. What's your point of view, Karen?
I'm coming at it from a different point of view. I mean, there's several things that I consider myself. I have lupus, and so I'm immunosuppressed all the time. And there are other people, cancer patients and things like that. So live vaccines are, a potential danger to us, live vaccines. And I mean, if you get vaccinated, and so for 2 weeks where that virus can be shedding from your body, I can get chickenpox, or I can get, some of the other live vaccines, things that are vaccinated for. So that is, and nobody wears a sign that says, my immune system's compromised. Are you vaccinated? And so there is certainly a concern there. And I think that people should be able to make their choices. No parent is making the decision with anything but the best will of their child in mind. I mean, the best good on either side of it, so I really appreciate that. No parent makes a decision and wants it to turn out to be the wrong decision.
Completely agree.
And so, but I also think that the government has no place mandating vaccines for everybody across the board. To me, it seems very fear-based if they're erasing all exemptions. Even the doctor who knows the patient is being limited and cannot give a medical exemption. And I don't know if you know this, Nick. I'm a retired pharmacist, and my husband is also a PhD in electrical engineering, so we're very much in the sciences.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I don't know how it is in your PhD work, but I would love to say that scientists are a different group of people, that they're above, peer pressure, that they are above working towards the correct answer because of the peer pressure, because there is a lot of peer pressure.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It takes so much courage to do the right thing. And it's not just in the medical sciences; it's across the board in the climate, the climate argument.
Oh, yeah.
There's an excellent YouTube video that was put out in August of last year, and the scientists, I couldn't believe they were so honest about the research that was being done. They said, for instance, if you wanted to get sponsored research, then it just needed to have the word climate in there. And so people are very much schools are run that way. You want your PhD students to bring in funds, and so you have to do the research that they want done. And, anecdotal, I had a pharmacist that I worked with. He was actually a chemical engineer before he became a pharmacist, and he was working for one of the bigger cigarette companies, and they wanted him to, see whether cigarettes were actually bad for people. And he said, yeah, they really are. This guy was so honest, and he said, it really is bad. And so they immediately fired him. And so then he went into pharmacy school. And I know that's just one example, but that's just people. And I don't know. I've never been very naive, and so I don't have that worldview. I don't look at people with a jaundiced eye, but I look at people as being, human. And there's fear involved, and that takes courage, and it takes integrity, and money's involved, and peer pressure. The things that happened in the 5th grade, they're still happening in your 50s.
Yeah.
And so, and have you? Now, this is a question. Have you read? There are some excellent. There's some excellent sites. Tina had a great call. I thought she was very polite and everything. She was very informed. But there are some excellent sites out there with the, reasons not to vaccinate. Have you read them?
Yeah, we've
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we've actually got to go to a commercial break, but I completely agree with you, specifically the sentiment of I'm of the mind that the more that you're educated, the more that you realize you don't know. And so if you're an individual that has gone to school for a significant period of time, if anything, it should create a level of humility within you to know the value of truth just being able to sneakily sneak up on you in such a way that you are completely unaware. But nevertheless, we've got to go to a commercial break. When we come back, more about vaccines.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now,
Nick Pitts.
And welcome to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you've decided to join us on this Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 day, National Siblings Day, National Wild or Farm Animal Day, the day that the Nashville Predators start their march to glory, also known as the Stanley Cup champions. They take on the Dallas Stars tonight. Here in Nashville, Tennessee. So this Tennessean finds himself in Texas in enemy territory right now, but I can take heart knowing that, one, we will deliver 2 back-to-back wins over the next couple of nights, and then 2, they will come back here, and I will be here fully painted up in gold and blue to root on my Nashville Predators. But nevertheless, so grateful that you have decided to join us here for this third hour, second hour for most of you. We've got here at the Millennial Roundtable, we got David Fraga, a man that needs no introduction but does need prayers because somehow, some way, he's rooting for the Stars. And then we also have Shane Pruitt, author of 9 Common Lies Christians Believe, that has not fallen for the truth that is the Nashville Predators are the greatest things since sliced bread. So grateful that you guys have decided to join us today. How are you?
It's great, man. It's good to be on.
Yeah, we're experiencing a little bit of some calls, I guess you could say, some calls and some questions. And so if you are just now joining us, we've been talking about vaccines. Specifically, we've been addressing what's going on in New York right now. Bill de Blasio, the mayor, has declared a public health emergency due to the outbreak of measles. And so just to kind of give you a scope and scale perspective, it's broken out specifically in 3 particular neighborhoods in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn right now. And so individuals are being told that they have to vaccinate right now, the MMR vaccination. And what we've seen just from a countrywide scale, we had anywhere around 360 cases all of 2018 relative to measles. And then this year, so far, only 4 months into the year, 4 months and change into the year, we've already had over 500 cases of measles. And so there has been a significant uptick in measles cases that have been making their way through the U.S. And that's put the question, I put the question to listeners like you all, is to vaccinate or not to vaccinate? That is the question. And so there's been theological rationales that you can give for both sides of the argument. One side can say that I'm loving my neighbor, therefore I am vaccinating my child to make sure that I can keep myself and my child, as well as other children, from being subjected to some of the difficulties and the detriments that comes with contracting one of these viruses or diseases. And then the other side of the argument would say that, well, I've been told to train up a child in the way they should go. I should protect this child. I've been tasked with the responsibility of raising up this child and protecting them. Therefore, I am not going to vaccinate my child because I've done some research, and I've decided that some of the research is substantiated to the point that I think that there's some connections to some detrimental effects and side effects that happen when individuals get vaccinated. Now, up until this point, I've went back and I did some research, and it seems as though I haven't been able to see some of the research that's clearly indicating that vaccinations are linked to, there's a causal link to some of these unintended consequences that some of our previous callers have put forward. I know that there's a movie. I'm sure some of you are going to be calling in right now and saying that the movie you're going to point back to the movie Vaxxed, but I know a lot of the research in Vaxxed has already been retracted right now. So I'll be really interested to hear a good faith argument. And here's what I don't want to devolve into it, because I know that we're completely booked on calls right now. Many of you are going on Facebook, and we're so grateful that you're willing to have this conversation with us. And I'm exceedingly grateful. But what I don't want this to devolve into is kind of a worldly argument where we start to rabble-rouse and just start to demonize the other side. I fully contend that I think the reason why this is so heated is because it centers on the greatest gift that any parent has been given in this world, and that's a child. And so, of course, each side is going to be very adamant, going to be very emotional, going to be very passionate towards their side. And so I'm not going to cast aspersions on your arguments, and I hope you wouldn't cast aspersions on my side of the argument as well. It just seems as though that this is the easiest way to love your neighbor. We've seen the effects of not getting some of these vaccines and how, by God's grace, we've survived a lot of that. And now we're at a point now where it seems as though we're subjecting ourselves based on shaky science towards not vaccinating ourselves. And I just don't understand it. And so we have opened up the phone lines. We've also opened up the Facebook page. Well, not that you can actually close a Facebook page. I actually think that's impossible to close a Facebook page. Well, I guess if we started saying some hate speech or some sort, but even that's subject to interpretation. So you can go on our Facebook page, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. Again, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. And if you're there right now, you'll see my face right underneath that comment section. And so if you can endure having to put up with my face, scroll down quickly, comment section, share your question or comment on the facebook.com /pointofviewradio, and what you share online we'll try to get to over air as well. Or if you can call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. Okay, so let's take some phone calls right now, shall we? So let's go on. Let's see, where do we want to go? Let's go to Brooks here in Texas. Brooks, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, Brooks, where are you from in Texas?
Houston, Texas. Go Rockets, go Stros.
Oh, my goodness! But you're rooting for the Preds, right? Tonight.
Go Preds.
My man. My man. Now we disagree on some of the other things, but right here with essentials, we got the Preds going on. Okay, Brooks. I mean, you can say whatever you want now. You can. Nevertheless, no, I'm just kidding. What's your point of view, Brooks?
I'm a Sooner at heart, so I'm headed to the spring game for the Oklahoma Sooners. But so I'm all over the place. But I did want to comment on a few comments that other callers have made. I'll address them in the order that I heard them from earliest to latest. And then I kind of wanted to bring in a Judeo-Christian perspective, my perspective. And I did want to say I think what you meant is correlation does not mean causation.
Yeah, I tripped up right there, yeah.
It's all right. It's all right. And then I also wanted to say that, the Facebook person mentioned that we are to do our own research. And yes, we are to do our own learning, I would say. But there are people whose jobs are to be on the cutting edge. So they are discovering. So we need to stay on top of learning what they are putting out, because we as normal population do not have the means to make our own decisions based on small sample size. I don't have a laboratory. I'm sure you don't have a laboratory. And then finally, I wanted to say that I found it interesting that the woman who called in who had a daughter who was a young RN, I found it interesting that she expressed some worry in saying that, the vaccines are always changing. They're always putting new ones out. And to me, it sounded like she was expressing, that's uncertainty on her end in the power of the vaccines. Well, I wanted to mention that I do have friends in the medical field, and viruses and bacteria are constantly changing. I guess you could even say evolving. And this environment, we're putting pressure on those bacteria and viruses to continue changing. They're changing at a rapid rate. That should not scare a Christian away. And then finally, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, I wanted to say that, the Jews and the early Christians were proponents of cleanliness.
And we have got to go to a commercial break. Brooks, thanks you so much for your phone call. We'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Nearly half of American adults report sometimes or always feeling lonely. That same study by Cigna also found that nearly the same percentage reported feelings of being left out. That is why they say loneliness is at epidemic levels. 25 years ago, I wrote a book, Signs of Warning, Signs of Hope, making a number of predictions for the future. Chapter 8 set forth the case for a coming crisis of loneliness. Years later, Philip Slater wrote about the pursuit of loneliness. The U.S. Census Bureau documented the increasing number of adults living alone. Dan Keeley talked about living together loneliness in one of his books. And Roberta Hestonese coined the term crowded loneliness. This trend was there for anyone to see if they began reading some of the sociological literature. Of course, lots of people have written about the crisis of loneliness since then. Robert Putnam wrote about it in his famous book, Bowling Alone. He argues that people need to be connected in order for our society to function effectively. Putnam concludes social capital makes us smarter, healthier, safer, richer, and better able to govern a just and stable democracy. In his book, Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal, Senator Ben Sasse laments that our traditional tribes and social connectedness are in collapse. All of this comes at a cost. Julianne Holt-Lundstedt has published research showing that people with weaker social ties had a 50% increased likelihood of dying earlier than those with stronger ones. Being disconnected, she says, is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The loneliness epidemic has arrived. Pastors and churches need to address this dangerous trend. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From 20th Century Fox and Franklin Entertainment, Breakthrough, starring Chrissy Metz, based on a true story. Breakthrough, rated PG, in theaters Wednesday, April 17th. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hey, this is Noel Boucher with the Ministry of Pure Hope, and I just want to encourage you to stand with the Point of View radio team. One of the things I love about Kirby's leadership and the work of the entire team here at Point of View is that they provide a platform for other ministries to come in and speak wisdom, speak truth, speak healing, and bring hope to listeners all around the country. That is a work of great power and great humility to provide such an awesome platform for us to connect as a community around the country. And I'm thankful for that. So support Point of View Radio, support the effort they are making to speak truth into these confusing and hurting times, and stand with this team and this community all around the country.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you have decided to join us on this National Siblings Day, April 10th, 2019. And so one of the things that we want to make aware of, we've made an announcement during the first hour. We'll go ahead and make an announcement during now, kind of big news. So I hope you're seated right now, because I'm about to share some big news right now. For the past 2 years, the Millennial Roundtable has been on Wednesday. Kirby and staff have been gracious enough to be able to give up the host chair to myself, as well as joining me, making me all the more better, and making me realize that Kirby has forgotten more than I'll ever know. But his grace is far exceeds his kindness in every measure. But one of the big announcements that we want to make is that we are moving the Millennial Roundtable. That is right. Not physically moving, but just moving the date because I am weak. So no, we will be moving it to Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Coming up on the first week of May, we will be transitioning the Millennial Roundtable to the Tuesday. And on a Tuesday. is what a certain R&B artist would like to say, on a Tuesday. That is right. On a Tuesday, we will be moving the Millennial Roundtable. And so it will be the same corny jokes, the same hopefully sparse musical lyrics, but more importantly, we will continue to address the cultural issues that are facing our country today and the world, and how do we think about those from a biblical perspective. And so you'll want to continue to follow along with us, and hopefully you'll join us on Tuesdays instead of Wednesdays as we continue the Millennial Roundtable and Point of View, what started off 40-plus years ago and continues to this day, giving emphasis to a younger generation's perspective on the news of the day from a biblical perspective. And so one of those things that we've been talking about today that many of you are interested in talking about as well and going back and forth on is this idea of vaccinations. And so a public health emergency was issued by New York Mayor Bill de Blasio yesterday, indicating that a measles outbreak has taken root in an Orthodox Jewish community in Williamsburg, 3 neighborhoods in particular. Now, he's calling for the mandatory vaccination of individuals that had not been vaccinated at this point. What we know is that all of last year, upwards of around 360 individual cases of measles were accounted for, and now that number has jumped up to over 400 right now, and we're only 4 months and change into the year. And so that's raised the question. We've been going back and forth to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. That is the question. And there have been a couple of comments and questions that have been linked to. Again, Shane, we're joined by Shane Pruitt as well as David Fraga. Shane, whenever I look on Facebook, somebody's yelling at me with their caps locked, and so just my own little spirit, I'm like, oh, I got to look at this, and then I kind of get lost in my words. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and let's jump on over to. Let's go to Idaho. I haven't been to Idaho in probably like 4 or 5 years, and we've got Rebecca in Idaho right now. Rebecca, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, Rebecca, where are you in Idaho?
We're right outside of Boise, about 25 minutes.
Okay. I was in Blackfoot probably 3 or 4 years ago.
I'm fairly new here, so I actually live in California, and vaccines is one of the reasons that I moved out of state.
Oh, wow. There it is. Now, I know Blackfoot is I think they call themselves the potato capital of the country. And so there's quite a few potatoes there. But nevertheless, let's go ahead. And what's your point of view, Rebecca?
Okay, so I wanted to address, first of all, I have friends that are on both sides that vaccinate their children and a lot of friends that don't. Mm-hmm. And I love them all the same because I always say it is a parent's right to choose what is best for their child. However, I do believe that a lot of parents aren't being informed. They're kind of just doing what the doctor has told them, and they're not given the black box warnings that are associated with a lot of these vaccines. So my point is, as a Christian, how does your faith line up with the fact that so many hundreds of babies have been sacrificed for the duplication of vaccines? And so just alone, the MMR there was 80 aborted fetal cells before they found the cell line to duplicate it. And it was a 13-week-old baby girl. At 13 weeks old, that baby girl has ovaries with 2 million eggs in them. And, her life has been snuffed out, and so many lives. And then just thinking about that alone, how does that line up with our faith? And is God really okay with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am perplexed by it. I'll just be completely honest with you. Shane, do you have anything? Did you like to add?
No, I mean, I don't.
I haven't even considered that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on it?
I'm just about, let's get informed. Let's really know what we're, the risk and the, benefits of vaccinations.
Yeah.
And, not just reading Google, because people think that moms like me, and first of all, I want to say I'm a mom of 3, and I chose a long time ago to not vaccinate my children. And the more research I did, the more peace I got with God. Like he just said, it's okay, like this is the way you should go. And the more I learned. And I also want to say I'm a stage 4 cancer patient too. And you want to know what? I am more concerned about the shedding of vaccines than I am getting a wild virus. So I think there's a lot here on the table. I think there's a lot of opinions, a lot of people trying to shove their opinions on others. But what it comes down to is we need to pray about it. God, is this what you want us to do? And if it is something we feel led to do, we really, really need to do our part in researching what is in the vaccines. What are they made of? How is it going to affect us? And are these pharmaceutical companies going to be held liable if our child does have an injury or death?
Yeah, I agree with you. And just like you said at the very beginning, when you think, okay, well, how do we approach this as Christians? Our Christian worldview is that ultimately God holds parents responsible to be the disciple makers for their children, to be really ultimately the pastors. God gives us pastors of church, but ultimately God has called parents to be the pastors of the kids. And so I believe as the spiritual leaders of the home, you have the right to do that. And so even though we don't know all the answers, one answer we do know is that parents should be, by God-given right, have the ability to make that decision and best informed decision for their family. And anything that tries to contradict that or people try to force otherwise, I think that's where you stand as a Christian community against any kind of force other than what God has given us as a right.
Right. And that's where, I feel like the government right now is just trying to take away our human rights, and that's obvious in New York right now. And I think that, what they want to do is shut us down in censorship on social media. And what we need to do is we need to band together. The people who really strongly believe that this is their human right to choose to vaccinate or not, we need to stand together and be a voice right now, because our voice will be taken away very quickly if we don't.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I really do appreciate your comment. And again, that's one of the things that I think is key here on Point of View is what we try to do is, one, we don't try to say what we don't mean, or we don't just try to lie. Like if I don't know something or if somebody doesn't know anything, and we're just completely honest. And when we're in this vaccination comment, based on everything that I know, like I am of the mind that I think vaccinations are a positive good. And I think there are others on the other side that think vaccinations are, they have more questions than answers, and those questions would lead them not to be able to get a vaccination. I would disagree with them, but I don't think there's any ill motive. It goes back to the root cause that we were talking about even at the top of the hour. The reality is that I think there are good people on both sides of the argument. I think we really do a detriment to the dialogue that we could have one with another when we try to cast aspersions on the other side and we try to demonize the other side like they're acting out of ill motive. I think that's far from the truth. What we continue to see, and it's even iterated in the biblical narrative, from Jesus on the cross asking his disciples to take care of his mother, Mary, to even Solomon when he's faced with the question of whose daughter is this. There's a heightened sense when we're talking about family and children or family. And I just want to be very aware that both sides are very passionate towards this end, and we should be able to have a thoughtful conversation in which we can be honest when we don't know. We can, two, be able to disagree with one another when we do know. And then three, hopefully come to a common ground understanding that moves, one, the glory of God forward, two, the welfare of our city for the better, and three, that we might experience the joy that Jesus has died in order that it might be made complete. We've got to go to a break. We'll continue taking your phone calls, 800-351-1212, right after this.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Nick Pitts.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts, joined at the Millennial Roundtable by Shane Pruitt and David Fraga. We have been talking about the vaccine debate, and we have been taking your phone calls. And my, oh my, there have been quite a few phone calls right now. Some of you have been on hold, and we are exceedingly grateful for that because you've been on hold for a long time. Others of you have been trying to call in, but you've been getting a busy signal because all our phone lines had been booked. And so thank you so much for holding on us. And then others of you have been on our Facebook page, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. But I must stand against lies when I see lies, because after all, this is Point of View. And so I'm going to have to direct your attention to our Facebook page. We have, I wouldn't consider this a friendly troll. This is a detrimental troll to us. And we have John says, I think it's smart to vaccinate against measles and any other childhood diseases, but I don't think it should be forced on anyone to have their child vaccinated. What next? Will they want to force everyone to eat apples, or heaven forbid, creamy peanut butter? We cannot stand for this. You don't have to force me to eat creamy peanut butter. My goodness, you put creamy peanut butter in the same room as me, and I will devour that stuff. Like, I don't need milk. I will go after that stuff. But apples, on the other hand, apples are disgusting. I don't know why someone would want to put apples in your body. Maybe if you put some brown sugar and then put it in a cake crust and then put ice cream over it, trying your best to null and void any nutritional value that's inherent within the apples. That's when apples are good. But nevertheless, well, John, we appreciate your trolling comment. No, I'm just kidding. We thank you so much for your comment. Creamy peanut butter, though. Nobody's forcing this guy to eat creamy peanut butter, especially if it's Jif. Huh. I will consume that. I actually ran across somebody the other day. Are y'all creamy or are y'all chunky?
Oh, man.
Yeah, creamy.
Creamy
for sure.
I like both, but I like chunky for some reason, man.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Creamy on an apple.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't realize we had a chunky guy. So from now on, for our listeners, just know that David has character issues. He cannot be trusted. There should be skepticism towards him. But nevertheless, let's continue taking some phone calls, shall we? Let's go ahead and let's go to Karen in Ohio right now. Karen, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Karen, where are you calling from in Ohio?
Norwalk.
Oh, where's Norwalk at? I was just in Ashland University the other day.
Oh yeah, I'm guessing an hour or so north.
Okay.
Of that, around Sandusky, Cedar Point.
Ah, okay. Very neat. Okay.
If you know where that is, big amusement park. So.
Oh, is that Kings Island?
Nope, that's Cincinnati. That's the southern part of the state.
Yeah.
We're in the very, very north.
Well, one of these days I'm going to we'll play this guessing game again if you call in, and I'll eventually get there.
There you go. Yeah, you'd like Cedar Point, yeah.
So Karen, what's your point of view?
Okay, I just wanted to call in mainly because I am an RN, and I've been working in a pediatric office for over 30 years, and I give the vaccines. I have noticed an increase in the autism. I do. You see these kids coming in, and it's so sad. However, I still believe in vaccines. And I've got a few different points I want to make. I do understand parents' concerns. I do. Some of these kids are severe, and it's just heartbreaking. And I did get into this conversation like midway through your program before I actually caught it. So maybe some people have already said this, but first of all, I want them to know there is a reason they were invented. There was a reason, and I'm not fear-mongering when I say people used to just die. You know, they really did, and that's why they developed these. So I get that. You know, and over the years, some of them have changed a little. For instance, the DTP, when I first started working there, we used to give that. And even for my own child, I was a little nervous about giving that one because I know the kids seem to be prone to sometimes seizures or high fevers. It was a little more prevalent with that particular vaccine. So that was always the one everybody was afraid of. Well, at some point, they changed the protein or something in there, and now it's called the DTAP. So I don't even know if I've heard of any in a long time now that have any kind of reaction to it like they used to. You know, yes, there can always be a little reaction, some fever, you know, maybe the leg's a little red, they might be a little fussy, maybe sleep a little more, but, you know, there is a reason they were invented. Yeah. The other thing I want people to know is you really need to get educated on this. I mean, I know there's so much out there, and I feel sorry for young parents today because it's hard. There's a lot more vaccines. There's more things they can protect you from, but that means there are more vaccines. Some parents are choosing to vaccinate, but kind of spreading them out a little more, which is fine. I do feel sorry for the babies, though, where the parents choose to give them one shot at a time. That means they're coming in there every week or two, and pretty soon the kid catches on. As soon as they hit the parking lot, they're going to get a shot, and they're beside themselves. The other thing is, I was looking up one day, like, what has changed in the past 30 years that I can point to, and that has changed that autism is so much more prevalent. And I was thinking about cell phones and just the whole technology thing.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have all of this when I first started doing that, and the autism rates were way lower. So think about this, though. People have cell phones beside them 24/7. You've got that baby, you're holding a baby, you've got a cell phone nearby. You're breastfeeding, you got that cell phone nearby. I think we really need to start looking a little bit into some of this. You know, you're on the computer, you're holding the baby on your lap.
Yeah.
I just think there's some other avenue to be going down rather than just grilling the vaccines. I really do. So, and also, please go to the cdc.gov.
Okay.
Get educated, read up on it. That's basically all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Karen, thank you so much for your phone call. Yeah, I think Karen's on to something when I just think that we're too quick to point a connection between vaccines and the autism and then other side effects because vaccines have been around for so long. But I do think it's worthy of investigation, the idea that there is something else that's becoming increasingly prevalent that could be the rise for the spike in autism rates. But we'll continue taking some of your phone calls right now. Let's go to Josh right now. Josh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Josh, what's your point of view?
I just was thinking about that lady that was called in a couple of calls back. You know, I'm all for personal opinions, but when your personal opinion infringes on my child's rights, then I got a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you don't want to vaccinate your kid for personal reasons, I get it. I know there's health reasons and whatnot, but if, you know, someone else's kid can't get vaccinated for those reasons, then if your reason is just personal choice, that creates an issue that I think a lot of people just overlook.
Yeah.
And they need to take that into consideration. That is my personal opinion going to infringe on somebody else's rights to, you know, possibly get them sick.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be addressed more.
Where are you located, Josh?
Missouri.
Oh.
Right now, I'm from Illinois, though.
Okay. In Missouri, are there laws on the books or policies that your child has to be vaccinated before they go into a public school?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my wife's area of expertise.
Yeah.
You know, she's more up to date on the laws regarding vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are issues where people just don't want to vaccinate their kids because of personal reasons, because they heard something on the internet or something. And I think that's an issue where they think they're being educated and they might not be, because the source that they're getting their information from might not be as valid as what it should be.
Yeah. Well, Josh,
and when you take that information and you're infringing on my kids' rights, then I got a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you so much for your phone call. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
See, I think Josh brings up a number of good points. But again, one, he's not trying to cast aspersions on the other side. Two, we just continue to see how just significant and resolute this argument is right now, just because it involves the world's greatest treasure. It's one of the world's greatest treasures, which is our kids. And so obviously we're going to be impassioned by this. And that has trickled its way out into the phone calls that we've taken, as well as into the Facebook comments that have been put forward. And so we thank you so much for that. And so we are going to have to go to a break right now. And when we go to a break, we're going to transition topics a little bit. And so we're going to move away from what we're calling this vaccination to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. And we're going to transition over to the Christianity potentially losing ground. To end the show, I think there's a lot to unpack relative to this article, the idea that Christianity is taking up a smaller and smaller subset of the population. And what does this mean for Generation Z, the one that's coming after millennials? What does this mean for millennials? Does that just require more leadership from millennials that are following after Jesus to be able to pick up the mantle and to be able to take up the Great Commission? We'll be talking a little bit about that as well. And we'll also be taking some of your phone calls on this as well. So you can be sure to call in 800-351-1212. Again, that number is 800-351-1212. Or you can jump over on Facebook, facebook.com/pointofviewradio. But we would ask that you like smooth peanut butter if you decide to call in. Let's just go ahead and let's set the filter out. We don't want to hear from you chunky peanut butter folk. I mean, it's just... you got character issues. You just can't be. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But we do want to hear from Nashville Predators fans, so you can for sure call in there. But when we come back, is Christianity losing ground? We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Many of you have followed First Liberty's case before the Supreme Court of the United States over the Bladensburg World War I Veterans Memorial. We hope the case will provide much-needed clarity to the interpretation of the First Amendment. The framers intended for the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to guard against the government establishing a national church. Read more broadly, it also prevents state officials from coercing the religious beliefs and actions of its citizens. Unfortunately, as Justice Clarence Thomas has said, this is an area of the law that is in hopeless disarray. We can lay the blame at the feet of a case from 1971 called Lemon v. Kurtzman. That decision has led to a variety of confusing court-created tests. Local officials, not knowing what to do, often ban religion. That kind of hostility to religion is something the founders never intended. We propose an alternative, that the Supreme Court replace those tests with an alternative one more in keeping with what the founders had in mind. Unless the state coerces someone into a religious belief or exercise, or enacts laws or policies that purport to actually establish an official religion, there is no violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Passive displays do nothing to coerce anyone into belief or religious exercise. They just stand there, reminding us of the service and sacrifice of something we would forget if we did not see a visible reminder. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Hi, I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Liberty Briefing. You can learn more amazing stories about how everyday Americans are standing up and saving religious freedom. Just visit firstliberty.org. You'll be inspired, educated, and informed. Visit firstliberty.org right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children. Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people on a monthly financial basis and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers as they have become like family to me.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm your host, Nick Pitts. So grateful that you have decided to join us today. I've got David Fraga as well as Shane Pruitt in studio. We have been talking about the vaccine debate, to vaccinate, to not to vaccinate. We have heard quite a bit from you all, and we're so grateful for that. But we're going to transition topics for this last little segment on the idea, is Christianity losing ground here in the U.S.? There was new data that was released according to a general social survey that indicated that in an ongoing study which has monitored U.S. trends, attitudes, and behaviors since 1972. Well, what did this study reveal? It reveals that the number of Americans who identify as non-religious, a.k.a. nuns, not the nuns of Sister Act and Catholic fame, but the nuns of I have no religion kind of notoriety, is now equal to about the number of Catholics, so 23%, and evangelicals 22.5% in the country. Since about 2005, those who check none under the religious affiliation category have seen a major growth in numbers, jumping from nearly 15% of the population to now roughly 23% of the population. So I don't even let's talk about this for a second. Roundtable. Let's talk about this for a second, fellas. So what are we to make of this? Like it's not simply just individuals that are leaving the faith, but are choosing not even to be associated with any faith. Shane, help us understand this.
Yeah. I mean, I love this topic. I'm an evangelist at heart. So I oversee our evangelism team and department for the Southern Baptist Convention here in Texas. And so here's what I believe. Is the church, Christianity as a whole, in constant decline when it comes to truly being born again, having the Holy Spirit of God inside of you? And so I'm talking about the universal church as a New Testament, not church as an organization. I think it's just a shift in our culture.
Okay.
In 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was culturally advantageous to identify as a Christian. Now, does that mean Christian like you and I understand, meaning bought with the blood of Jesus, have the Holy Spirit of God inside of you? I think those numbers haven't changed, maybe even in growing. I think what we're talking about is mainly quote-unquote cultural Christians that at one time it was culturally advantageous to identify as a Christian. Today, it's not.
Okay.
So what I think, I'm excited about it because to me, it's starting to be a clear line in the sand of those who are taking their faith serious, all in on following Jesus, versus those that just identify as a cultural Christian.
Okay. Hey, David, what's your take?
Yeah, so I think especially the millennial generation and Gen Z has a lot to do with like being your own self in a way. Kind of like discovering who you are and what you do a lot of times. And so the reason why I could definitely see why there's a rise of, non-Christians is because of just like, even though it's cultural, I'm going to go countercultural in everything that I do, right? So they're trying to find themselves and not be drawn so much into like what their parents are telling them or what they've been forced to do. But all of a sudden now the rebellion is actually to find yourself in a starting point that is not in Christianity, but a starting point like finding who you are in yourselves. And so when that happens, then you have identity issues. You have a lot of, Gen Z, according to Barna Research Group, is known as the first post-Christian, era per se, or generation to come in here in the U.S. And so you see how a lot of, even in the 20s and when people go to college, a lot of them leave the church, right? So
what do you think? So are we losing anything? Okay, so we'll say it's true that we're losing the aurora of it being socially advantageous to be associated with Christianity. Are we losing anything else besides that social standing, the social advantageous position by that? So I'm thinking, are we gaining hostility in that from the culture now, that it's no longer cool to be seen as Christian, or it's no longer socially advantageous to be seen as Christian?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and this sounds terrible, but I think it's just reality, for lack of a better term, is the church has a PR problem.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is if you just Google why are Christians, and then all the suggested Google searches that come up are why are Christians mean, why are Christians, I think even one of them that pops up are why are Christians fat? It's just everything's negative in nature. All right, so Nick's doing it now. What are some things that
I can't spell Christians right. Keep on going.
And so I think once again, that's why it sounds weird, but these kind of studies excite me because I think it's a chance for the church to truly be salt and light. Because sometimes in evangelism, one of the toughest things about evangelism, especially here in the South, is you almost have to convince someone they're not a Christian before you can truly share the gospel with them. Because there's this cultural Christianity that often gets in the way of the gospel. So I think as the clearer the line in the sand gets, the easier it is to be salt and light and say, man, there's a vast difference of what it means to truly be a Christian versus just a cultural Christian.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I could definitely see one of like Shane's arguments about that there's starting to be more of a line in the sand, especially here in the South. Like, okay, you either are or you aren't, just because there is a lot of confusion. There's a lot of just things going up in the air. But you start to see kind of like the social being drawn towards indirectness, which is like all to do with, okay, being around people who identify as Christians. However, I see them behind doors and they're acting a different way, or trying to hang out with people in school who are like, hey, oh, you don't go to church? That's so weird, or whatnot. But all of a sudden, you're starting to see kind of a movement of this Gen Z coming up, and they're starting to really, really be more independent in terms of where they're headed and what they're trying to choose to do. But yeah, are you looking up that Google search?
Yeah, keep on going.
Okay. You good? But I could definitely see where there is more of a line, especially here in the South, where there's just a lot of just confusion of just like, okay, what does it actually look like to be a Christian, to be a Christ follower? Because I've heard all my life one way of just like through all these different denominations, through all these different things and pastors and preachers, but what is it exactly? You know?
Yeah, I think that it does give us the opportunity, because I think it's kind of a merger of both yours. I think you're both saying the same thing. It's the reality of we've got a horrible PR problem, and then two, with a horrible PR problem, it requires us, one, to boil down to essentials, right? And so that goes to David's point of, okay, well, now I got to figure out, since we got a horrible PR problem, what's the foot we put forward? Not necessarily what we're against, but what we're for. Like, we're for the fullness of life. We're for the completion of joy. What does that look like as we move forward in this kind of era where it's no longer seen as socially advantageous to follow after Jesus, but now you're kind of setting yourself up to be unpopular if you're going to follow after Jesus? Well, one, it shows commitment. You've counted the cost, as Jesus said. And then two, now that I've counted the cost, I want to make sure that I invest well. And so what are those areas of my life that I want to invest in order that I, one, might extend the kingdom, two, might experience the good, might move towards the good of this world, and three, might experience joy in my soul, because God's commanded me to rejoice, and that's not optional. And so what does it look like to rejoice in him? But we'll continue this conversation and more next week. But so grateful that you have decided to join us today. David, Shane, it's been so grateful to be here with you all, but we've got to go, and we'll see you here next week.
Yeah. Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of view can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants his best for us. We can face whatever the world throws at us as long as we stand together. If you have not signed on, please do it now. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Or call us 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.